hope all of you are enjoying the conference thus far. We're going to get started on our next and final breakout session, which is on the topic of retirement plans designed for construction companies, given by Tom Santa Barbara of DirectAdvisors. Tom is going to discuss a number of significant changes with respect to retirement plans. So just a few housekeeping items before I turn things over to Tom. I will be monitoring the chat box, so please use that for any questions you have during the presentation. You can send them to me privately or to all panelists. We'll have a Q&A session after the presentation to go through those. Also, let us know through the chat function if you are experiencing any problems or need any technical assistance. So with that, please welcome President and co-founder of DirectAdvisors and fellow Penn Stater, Tom Santa Barbara. Tom, we are?
We are Penn State. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it very much. And thank you, everybody, for attending this breakout session. As Joe said, I'm Tom Santa Barbara. I'm president of DirectAdvisors, and we're excited at DirectAdvisors. This is our 20th year in business, my 40th year total in business, and happy to provide some hopefully beneficial information to you on some of the changes that could affect your retirement plans going forward. So we're very, very happy to do this presentation for you. I'd like to do a little bit of context for you and talk to you a little bit about the industry in general, the 401k profit sharing industry, or what we term defined contribution plans. It is very widespread. There's over $6 trillion of assets in 401k profit sharing plans in this country, with over 100 million participants. So it's widespread. So that's the good news. The other good news is that it's about 90% of the marketplace now. You know, the days of pension plans or defined plans, defined benefit plans that you would get if you went to work in a corporation are gone. You know, we see them now at unions. We see them in state and municipal governments, but they're few and far between out there. So the main saving tool for retirement now is a defined contribution plan. And, you know, when employees are surveyed, they like the plan. They like the tax advantages, the pre-tax advantages of deferring income. The problem is that it is not widespread in amount of contributions going into the plan. The average contribution amounts, now they vary by age brackets, but the American Benefits Council says that the average for a 55-year-old or 65-year-old is in the neighborhood of $200,000. So I don't know about you, but I don't think I could retire on $200,000. So what's happening is we're seeing, because of this lack of retirement saving, employees working longer. They're working into their 70s and sometimes into their 80s. You know, we often make cracks about Walmart and the Walmart greeter, but I think Walmart actually discontinued the Walmart greeter now. But we are seeing a large swath of the baby boomers retiring and moving into that second job or second career. So what we're trying to do is help employers provide world-class, best benefit retirement plans for their workers. So today we're going to talk about a new style plan, and it's called a Pooled Employer Plan. Now, for those of you who have been involved with workers' compensation trust, it is not like that. Don't get nervous. I know a lot of people have been and had bad experiences with workers' compensation trust. It is not a workers' compensation trust. It has nothing to do with experience of any participant in the plan. So don't worry about that. So as a little background, I want to go and talk to you about what's happening in Washington. I think it's important to realize that Washington is concerned about the retirement readiness of its population. And what Washington has done, and this is an executive order by President Trump that he signed into effect a broadening of the multi-employer plan rules. And that was kind of the predecessor to a PEP, a pooled employer plan. What Congress actually did is create PEPs from this legislation. And what it did, and I think this is very important, previously with multi-employer plans, if you had one bad group in the plan, a group that was not compliant, was not following the rules, then it would affect the whole plan. That has been eliminated now going forward. And it is a huge incentive now for small to medium-sized employers to get into a pooled employer plan. Now, let me define what I mean by small to medium-sized employers. Anyone from a startup plan up to about 200 participants in the plan, we think that this PEP would work for you, especially the group that has an audit, the plans that are over 100. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. So let's also talk about the definitions of MEP. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there are really three types of MEP: open MEPs, closed MEPs, and PEPs. And what we want to look at is really the difference between a closed MEP and a PEP, because closed MEPs and PEPs all file a single 5500. There is one audit done on the plan in general for the entire plan, and any of the bonding requirements is based on the total assets in the plan. So this is where you're going to see some of the benefits when you look at introducing a MEP into your company. All right, let's talk about the Secure Act, because the Secure Act really changed some things and made available the PEP process and the PEP plan. It is available, brand new, January 1 of 2021. It's limited to 401k profit sharing plans, and it has to designate, and I will be getting into more of this, a pool plan provider. That pool plan provider is going to take responsibility and liability for your plan. You know, some of the things that we hear a lot when we look at the problems that we're hearing over my 40 years in the business, but 20 years with DirectAdvisors, is employers are telling us that their plans are complex. They don't understand all of the different nuances of the plan. Well, the PEP will simplify that for you. The other thing, and the big thing, is administrative burden. We hear this so often. You know, we're contractors. We are not experts in the 401k field. We don't really want to know about it, and we really don't want to dedicate a single staff person with 20 hours a week handling enrollments and handling disbursements and handling all the administrative nightmare that can be in a 401k plan. And the thing that I'm most shocked about is when I talk to prospects or even some people that I think should be in the know, is their lack of knowledge of the fiduciary liability that a plan sponsor has. The fiduciary liability means that if something goes wrong in the plan, if there is a suit against the plan and the plan sponsor is found guilty, you have personal liability. It's not just the corporation, it's personal liability. So the PEP addressed a lot of those concerns and the design of it through the Secure Act. Okay, so again, one of the big benefits that we're looking at here is the bad apple rule. One employer's failure does not disqualify the plan. Very important as we move forward in the design of these plans and they become very, very popular. Okay, creating and maintaining the PEP. As I mentioned to you before, there's three elements, actually four elements of the PEP. One of them is you, and that is you're the adopting or member employer. Okay, so you will adopt the plan. You have to do your research when you look at these PEPs. There's going to be a lot of them coming out. We happen to be one of 8 regional providers of what's called the Newport PEP. Newport is a very large and experienced MEP program advisor, TPA, record keeper, custodian. They've been in business a long time. We've been selected as one of 8 around the country to provide this PEP to you with Newport Group. So when you select a PEP, and I know Fidelity has one, and I believe there's some insurance companies that are going to offer them, the main thing that you have to do, and your responsibility, is to choose that PPP, or pooled plan provider. That pooled plan provider will take a lot of the responsibility, administrative responsibility, and liability off your shoulder. The next thing that we're going to look at is the 338 manager. And a lot of you, we throw these terms out, and this is very, very important from a fiduciary standpoint. A 338 investment management firm will take most of the fiduciary liability for selection, monitoring, and removal of your investment funds that are not performing. That 338 will also provide you with an investment policy statement, will provide you best practices and how to review themselves, a 338 provider. So that is a real important selection when you choose a PEP, to understand who the PPP is, to understand who the 338 manager is of the investments, and understand that the trustee now, the PEP must designate one or more trustees. So you are designating the PPP as a trustee of the plan. You're designating the investment manager as a trustee of the plan. And your responsibility now will be to review that PPP and that 338 investment manager, and we can show you how to do that. All right, I think one of the most important things, and this is for your accountant, the Bonadio Group, to talk to you about, is there are small business tax credits. And if you are an employer less than 100 employees, all right, and receive at least $5,000 in compensation to the employees, and you are starting up this plan, you can get tax credits for the startup cost and for the non-highly compensated employees' cost. So you can get credits up to $5,000. I'm not going to go deep into it because I believe you should talk to your CPA or your tax counselor about this, but it is an incentive for newly started plans to provide this 401k pooled employer plan to their employees. So again, more evidence that the government is concerned about the savings of retirement savings of its individuals. So very, very important. So why the PEP? Why would you make a change in your current plan, or why would you think about starting a new retirement plan? Well, number one, it's probably going to be less expensive for you. And that means the total cost of the plan. When you look at expense in a retirement plan, you have to look at what the third-party administrators' costs are, what the custodians' costs are, what the investment lineup costs are, and the management of your investment or your 338 fiduciary. Those are the costs that you have to look at when you start examining a pooled employer plan. And from the information and the prices that I have seen and the quoting that we've looked at with some of our clients and some prospects, it is lower. It's very, very competitive up to that 200-person group. The other thing that I think is really important is it takes a lot of the fiduciary risk out of your bucket, so to speak. You have fiduciary risk for plan operation. If the plan is not following the document and it is discovered, then you have personal liability. You have personal liability on the investments. In the last couple of years, there's been a tremendous amount of lawsuits in institutions of higher learning, colleges and universities. And these suits are based on share class of investments provided by the trustees of the plan. And the suits really say that the trustees of the plan, the fiduciaries of the plan, did not do due diligence on the share class of the investments, which means they didn't pick the lowest share class. And that's how they were sued. And most of these cases, and we've done some seminars on this, most of these cases you won't find a court settlement. You'll find a settlement out of court. They will settle out of court because it would be too expensive to go to court and have a jury or a judge rule on this. So most of the cases that are settled prior to getting into court. And it's for a reason, because it could be very, very expensive. But a little thing, and it's not so little over time, of not looking at expenses in the plan and making sure they're reasonable will get you into a situation of fiduciary liability. So these are the things that if you hire a 338 investment fiduciary, they'll be looking at for you. And I think probably one of the biggest things is the administrative burden that it puts on the staff. And we'll get into this later by detail, but I will go through the actual responsibilities of the PPP, or the PPP, to make sure that you understand what responsibilities that the company takes and what responsibilities the PPP takes. Okay, what are the market expectations for the pooled employer plan? Well, right now, surveys have been done. Mercer Group did a survey. They said they believe 76% of small businesses with fewer than 99 people are very or somewhat likely to switch to a MEP or a PEP to reduce administrative and compliance costs. Well, there it is right there, folks, 76%. They also would switch to mitigate the fiduciary liability. So administrative costs, fiduciary liability are some of the key functions of the PEP product. So we think that, and we believe that the MEP and the PEP combined will over time replace many of the current plans that are out there on an individual basis, especially with plans that are over 100 in an audit situation, because they're going to significantly reduce their audit costs as we go forward. Okay? Why the focus? Well, 57 million Americans right now, they're non-governmental workers, would have no access to retirement savings programs. That's a lot of people. We have 1/3 of the portion of Americans, or 33% of the workforce, who is part of the gig economy. Now, what is the gig economy? The gig economy are temp workers, or workers that work like 500 hours. They're now going to be eligible for the PEP. So if you have a gig worker and they haven't worked, or they've worked in the last consecutive 3 years, they've worked at least 500 hours, they will be eligible to participate in the PEP. And some estimates say that that is between 25 and 40% of the economy. These are contract workers or workers that come in and do a job, or part-time workers for you. So this statistic really shocked me, and that is 45% of companies from 1 to 49, all right, do not have or have retirement plans. Only 45%. 75% when you jump up to 50 employers, up to 99 have retirement plans, and 95% of over employers larger than 500 have retirement plans. So you can see where the gap is, and that is from 1 to 49 employers that don't have a retirement plan. So their employees do not have access. So that's a big number of employees that this PEP plan will cover. And statistics show that employees that have the ability to defer their income in a employer-based retirement program, they're 16 times more likely to do it. So it's a big reason for establishing and making these PEP plans, and why Mercer and some of these other consultants believe these PEP plans will be so explosive in that marketplace. Okay, let's focus on the PEPs and why the multiple influences that are converging that make the PEP plan so popular. Okay, number one, there are tremendous changes in the government regarding regulations, and right now we're looking for updates. A lot of plans are getting updates in their documents. That's going to be another change. We're in a litigious environment. We saw an explosion of lawsuits over the last 3 or 4 years, as I mentioned earlier, especially in the higher education field. And there's lack of expertise. And it's hard to have one dedicated employee in your office that is trained in all of the different avenues of eligibility and loans and quadros and all those speaky terms that will accompany the administration of a plan. The advantages of the MEP and the PEP are going to be low cost to operate. The fiduciary liability and administrative duties will be really handed off to experts, and employers now can focus on the core business that they do. Sets and simples really never took off in the marketplace. And what we see now is states trying to develop their own state-run retirement plans, and that really hasn't caught on either. So we still think that the employer-sponsored plan, if we can make it simple, if we can make it low cost, if we can make it understandable, is really going to be the big area of growth in those smaller companies. All right, I mentioned pooled plan providers before, but I want to get a little deeper in them and explain to you what they are and what responsibilities they have. They're designated by the plan as a named fiduciary. So they're going to be a 402A fiduciary for the plan. That's very important because they now take over the plan administration role, and you don't. Your responsibility is to do due diligence on that PPP. So that's where your responsibility is right there. They will take all of the administrative duties from you. That includes, they will make sure that the testing is done properly. They will make sure that you have a ready signed 401k, ready signed 5500 ready to be provided to the government. They will follow and make sure all of the ERISA codes are followed. They will also register. They have to register as a pooled plan provider. That's one of the responsibilities that the PPP has. And they will acknowledge in writing that they are the named fiduciary and plan administrator of the plan. The 338 investment fiduciary will also acknowledge in writing that they are going to be the plan fiduciary. Okay? So we talk about the fiduciary services and outsourcing those fiduciary services. Newport Group will be the 401A named fiduciary. They're responsible for evaluating and monitoring the plan fiduciaries and services provided to the plan. That would include us. They will also act as a 316 fiduciary. And the 316 fiduciary, this is where I think is the big value in the pooled employer plan. And that is, number one, they're going to furnish all of the disclosure documents to your employees. The summary annual reports, any type of changes, that is all going to be distributed by the PPP. They will maintain all the required plan information, data, reports, and they will manage all your plan documents. And most importantly, they're going to manage the distributions, the loans, and the distributions when you have a terminated employee. The other thing is eligibility. They are going to manage the eligibility for your staff. So if you hire someone and you have a 3-month waiting period and you forget about it, all right, that could cause major problems for you if on an audit or if an employee starts to complain, well, why aren't I into the plan? Well, and you say to them, well, I never offered it to you. I'm sorry. Well, there are some corrective measures that will cost you as an employer some money. You get rid of that burden. That burden now shifts over to the pool plan provider, the PPP, and they're responsible for tracking eligibility on the plan. And I think that's extremely important when you manage your plan. Okay, this is just a breakout of it. The fiduciary services, the maintenance of data, the enrollment elections, the distribution elections, the beneficiary elections, all those things are managed by the PPP. Participant transactions, payroll, and census are managed by them. You as the employer provide that census information, of course. The salary deferral changes. You're not involved with those anymore. And participant investment elections. You don't deal with any of that either. and you really shouldn't have been in the past, to be honest with you. Distribution process, loans, in-service, hardships, all those things, quadros, termination, required minimum distributions. And by the way, the Secure Act changed the required minimum distributions, just for your knowledge, from 70.5 to now 72. So that's another change in the Secure Act that has come about. Plan documents and the disclosures. I can't tell you how many people come to us and say, well, you know, was I supposed to send this notice out, or was what's required of me to send out? So, you know, one of the things that we hear a lot is a summary of material modifications, the SMM. That is all done now by your 316 or the plan PPP, plan provider. So you relinquish all of those responsibilities and liabilities in this plan. All right. The other thing is the coordination with auditors. On the 5500 preparation, the Newport Group in this case will work with the auditors as well as DirectAdvisors, because we've done that for years, and take a lot of that work out of your administrative person's hands. And I think that's a big administrative relief under the PEP plan, PEP. All right. 338 investment fiduciaries. If you don't have a 338 investment fiduciary on your plan, you probably should hire one. A 338 investment fiduciary is invaluable in making sure you're, number one, getting the lowest cost for your investments. There is no conflicts of interest at all with the investment providers, so there's no any type of feedback or any type of kickback by the mutual fund companies. There's none of that. The fiduciary has your best interest at hand and will provide you an investment lineup. We'll monitor that lineup typically on a quarterly basis. We'll report to you on a quarterly basis of any changes. We'll design an investment policy statement for your company. That's extremely important. We'll provide you best practices and how to review, say, in a quarterly meeting. So a 338 provider is invaluable when you have these plans. So if you don't have one, I think it's probably a best practice to take a look at hiring one. All right, and then the trust and custodial services. The trustee, in this case, Newport will act as the trustee and the custodian. What's the advantage? They talk to each other. And I think that's a huge advantage when you start dealing with audits or any type of reporting information. They will perform all of the required trustee functions, including the tracking of the contributions, the holding of the assets, the platform that Newport uses. You can select any mutual fund that's available out there. It's a complete open architecture platform, and will provide the lowest institutional pricings for those investments. So you have low cost on administration with the protections, and you have low cost on the investments with the institutional pricing. All right, onboarding. You know, one of the things I hear all the time is the process of onboarding or conversion of a plan is just a nightmare, and sometimes it is. But when you have good partners and you're moving your plan, you have to have a process. And what I've always found is that good communication skills and good information really equals good onboarding and good conversion. So we will help you, and the Newport Group will help you with onboarding. We will help you with looking at the appropriate documents. We'll make sure that you know, all the information that we need from a prior TPA record keeper is gathered. So it's taken all of that burden off you. All of the transactions that you will have, including enrollment. Enrollment's typically done by the 338 fiduciary, the investment advisor, will be done. And of course, all the compliance necessary, including forfeiture tracking, which can be a nightmare, and vesting, which also is one of the things that we hear a lot is a problem on conversions. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about something I get excited about, especially in the construction field, because we deal with a lot of contractors that do public work. And it's important when you design a 401k retirement plan that you design it to take into effect the contributions, if you're making prevailing wage contributions into your 401k plan? Did you design the plan properly so everyone can take advantage of the features? Well, in a pooled employer plan, what you're going to have is you're going to have one document, and you have to be careful when you select that document or select your PPP, and they provide you a document, because it's going to be one single document. So you have to make sure it's flexible enough to handle some of the things that you will experience as a contractor. I mentioned one of them. One of them is prevailing wage. So in the plans that we look at, we make sure that you certainly have the design feature of using a safe harbor. Whether it be a non-elective or whether it be just a safe harbor contribution, you're able to do that. You know, we look at automatic enrollment, and statistics are amazing. 92% of automatic enrollees stay in the plan. So if you put automatic enrollment on your plan as a feature, 92% of those people automatically enrolled stay on the plan. And that feature is becoming more and more popular, especially with a little bit larger plans, say in the 40, 50 degree range, certainly up over 5,000. I mean, that is just a normal requirement now over, say, 500 people. Eligibility requirements, very important when you design, especially prevailing wage plans, the eligibility requirements. For example, we look at eligibility on prevailing wage as 1 hour of public work because we want to utilize those fringe contributions into that profit sharing plan and be able to go into that profit sharing plan. Employee contributions. Employee contributions can either be a Roth, which is post-tax, so after-tax contributions that grow on a tax-free basis. If you meet some of the requirements, the plan has to be, or you have to be in that plan for at least 5 years. So there's other requirements there. But again, the flexibility of the plan. Employer contributions. Employers typically would have a contribution either towards a match or towards a profit-sharing contribution. Again, construction, very important, because you could possibly have another source of contribution, and that would be prevailing wage. So that's just an add-on. Now, why would you have an extra line for prevailing wage contributions? Well, it's because of how ERISA, or the governing body of these retirement plans, EDSA, look at the contributions for prevailing wage. Those prevailing wage contributions are going to be employer contributions in the eyes of ERISA. So that is very important when you look at your retirement plan, because if it's an employer contribution, it can offset any type of match or any profit sharing contribution if the employer wants to. So it's a benefit to the employer and to the employees that don't get public work hours or fringe supplements, and kind of level the playing field when you set up these retirement plans. Again, it's one of the quirks that you use when you start to design these plans for contractors. Vesting requirements, you can have immediate vesting, and you would probably have immediate vesting for prevailing wage, but you can have 3-year cliff vesting, 5-year cliff, 6-year graded on any other type of contributions in the plan. Participant loans are available. And again, any type of qualification for participant loans, the administration of participant loans, are all done by the PPP. And plan distributions. In my 40 years experience, I know that this is one of those areas where employers do not like to get involved, and that's terminated employee plan distributions. This is all done by the PPP. Okay, and this is one of the last slides here that we put in, and that is sort of a chart of a pooled employer plan, PPP or PEP, a PEP versus a single employer plan, and it's based on the responsibilities of the plan sponsor or the employer. And if you look at it, and we're not going to go over it now, but just take some time to look at it, and you'll see how truly the pooled employer plan can really take a lot of those nightmare headaches that you have and remove them and send them to a qualified fiduciary to handle a lot of that work for you. Okay? So that concludes my presentation. I put my contact information on there for you. We are an accredited investment fiduciary. I am. And a certified plan fiduciary analyst also. And like I said, I've been in this business for 4 years and happy to help you answer any questions that you may have. And we have a very, very qualified staff, CFPs, certified financial planners to help you and your employees with all of the preparation for asset allocation on an individual basis. So happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. That was a great presentation, a lot of information there, certainly a lot of changes. Hopefully all for the good with respect to retirement plans, both in reducing costs and fiduciary liability for contractors. I'm not sure how crazy us accountants are about having another PPP acronym to deal with, but not sure what we can do about that. We do have a few questions that did come through here. And, you know, to the extent you can answer this, I mean, how do you think, this question got asked a few different ways, but how do you think, you know, these PEPs will essentially do away with, you know, a traditional 401k plan? I mean, will it, obviously, you know, company size, et cetera, is going to matter, but, I mean, where do you see this going?
Well, again, I think a lot of the initial studies say that, you know, over time, and I think over the next, I would say 3 to 5 years, I think the smaller employers, the 1 to 200, will be enticed by the benefits of the PEP program, especially the offloading of the fiduciary liability. That's a big deal. I mean, I can't tell you how many plan sponsors that I talk to, prospects I talk to, and I start mentioning fiduciary liability, and I sort of get this blank look. And the big thing that I hear is, well, we hire those people to do that, or they do that for me. You cannot reduce or eliminate all of your fiduciary responsibilities. You just have to be aware of what they are and have best practices to do evaluations of your PPP and your 338 fiduciary, and that can easily be done if it's done properly. But I just see it for cost purposes. I see it for the tax benefits that are going to happen, especially with the new plans, and I certainly see it, you know, as we get into the audit situation. You know, you might close your ears, Joe, but you know what's going to happen is they're going to have one audit for these plans. And you know, you're going to see substantially reduced audit costs, especially for the companies that are hovering around 100 and maybe put a new plan in and, you know, don't have a big asset balance in the plan. That's a pretty large cost to send over to all the participants in the plan. So for those reasons, I think it's going to be very popular.
Sure. So, and then where do companies start? I mean, you know, this would be in effect after 12/31/20 here. So is there a certain, you know, deadline or that they have to have filings in place with respect to setting up a plan, or what's the timeline look like for that?
Yeah, I think it's really the beginning. You know, January 1, 2021 opens the door to the pooled employer plans. So the floodgates are now open. I think what you're seeing is there are companies like Fidelity is now involved with the PEP. There's other insurance companies that are looking to get involved with the PEP. So it's a way to get in it's really a mature business. You know, multiple employer plans have been around a long time. What's changed is that the nexus has changed. In other words, they don't have to be affiliated companies. They can now be any company anywhere in the country and belong to a MEP or PEP. We call it a PEP because that's what the Secure Act names it now. It's the PEP. So anyone can get in. What you'll see is you'll see a banded pricing for, say, 338 services. So as your assets are up, the pricing goes down. You'll see pricing on the mutual funds at institutional pricing. You'll see the pricing for the third-party administrator and custodian all visible for you. So it's extremely transparent. You will meet all of your requirements for reasonable fees. You know, your 408B2, your fee disclosures will be provided to all of your participants. Obviously you as the owner of the plan sponsor gets 408B2, but all of your other disclosure information to the participants is done by the PPP. So all of that combined, again, pricing and all those things will make a big difference.
Okay. Next question, just in regard to the 338 investment fiduciary, is that DirectAdvisors or is the 338 Newport?
Now, 338, we will act in our plan as a 338 investment advisor. We manage right now about $550 million of assets under management as a 338 fiduciary. So we will act as a 338 fiduciary in our plan.
Okay. Another question that came in regarding the maintenance of data. Newport maintains it, but how do they share it with the employer so the employer can make necessary payroll changes? Yeah,
Newport will offer you a portal, employer portal, plan sponsor portal, to put all of that information, whatever your payroll period is. It'll be like a census dump, basically. It'll be a name, date of birth, date of hire, hours worked, salary, deferral, that. So you'll have a continuous stream. So you have to make sure your payroll can be designated to provide that information. Once you provide that information, Newport will be responsible for the enrollments, the eligibility calculations, all of that information they'll have. So once you set that up, you start having minimal interaction with all of the requirements necessary for loans or any of that kind of stuff. But you will have your own portal to make changes, either deletes or adds. You'll be able to do that.
Okay. One final question here. This one, came with a disclaimer. I know it's way too early to probably be asking this, but if an employer does join a PEP and determines it's not for them, is it difficult for them to exit? No. There's no long-term contracts. Very similar to a regular plan. All of the accounting is done individually for the participants of the plan, so there's no issue there. The beauty of the PEP is they're going to give you one document or one investment lineup, so it's easy to, know where your money is, and you have a very wide, diversified investment portfolio, but it is not that difficult to move if you're uncomfortable with it or you're not happy with the PEP to move out of the PEP. Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, Joe, it's not like a workers' comp trust, okay? You don't get a parting gift like a bill on the way out the door. No. Well, that's good, yeah. Those are all the questions we have, Tom. So please be sure to check out the attendee hub link, which is located on the conference website. You'll find Tom's exhibitor page for more information on how DirectAdvisors can help your company. You can connect with them by clicking on the Contact Us button on their page. So that about wraps up our conference today. On behalf of Bonadio and all our sponsors, we thank you all for attending our annual educational event for the construction industry. Again, be on the lookout for an email tomorrow that will contain the link to access all session recordings, slide decks, and the compensation study summary report. Your feedback is highly valued by us, so please be sure to fill out the survey in the attendee hub. We look forward to hearing your thoughts. Tom, again, thank you for your presentation this afternoon, and again, thank you all for attending, and have a great week, everyone. Great. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. We'll see you. Bye now.